What's going on, guys? That was a scene from my latest film project called The Divide, and today we're going to break down not only how I did the sound design for this particular scene, but we're going to talk about my process, some of the sound designing tools that I use, and just some basic sound design techniques that you guys can use no matter what software you're using. Now, before we dive into sound designing this scene, I wanted to first show you guys my secret weapon for sound design, and that is something called Krotos Studio. Alright, so right here we have Krotos Studio. Over here on the left side, you have all the different categories of sounds that you could choose from. Ambiances, cinematic, footsteps, Foley, the list goes on and on. Right over here in this section, you could start to choose through the different ambiances. So you have city, forest, suburbs, and you can choose from a million different presets. Now, what's really interesting about this is that if you take something like city and you go into skyline, and you could start doing more of the traffic, and you could play around with these little pads, and every single preset that you choose has these different pads. So on city right now, you have the choice of going a little bit more towards the skyline or towards the traffic, right? So you can go skyline, start playing, and this could just go on forever. And that's what's amazing about this, is that no more do you have to go and find one particular sound and then just stick with that sound. You could create your own ambience. Let's just say you wanted to use skyline and mix a little bit of the traffic in there. So you wanted something like that. And you wanted more horns. Okay, you got more horns in there. Maybe you want more sirens. More sirens. And that's just one category. Now, if you go into something like cinematic and you go to, let's just say, dark entry, for example, you have something like those hits that are extremely usable right away. Now, if you press the pad more than once, you have not only that one hit, but then it gives you a different hit every single time. Now, over here is pretty cool. Every single preset that you choose comes with a different set of controls over here, and over here you have pitch. So if you hit the hit and then you put the pitch up, it's a completely different hit. That's the bram, and then you can put it all the way down the pitch, and then you have a much slower, deeper, darker bram. And that's extremely usable, just that alone. Now that you guys get kind of a feel for what Krotos is, let's start sound designing. So let's start with the first look here of what this scene looks like. So it starts off with that, and then we go into under the water, and then we come out of the water. Now we're struggling for air, okay? And we're struggling, we need some splashing sounds, and then we're screaming. There's a ton of different sound design points that you could really immerse the audience into. So what we're gonna start with is just a simple hit. So let's find ourselves a simple hit that we could start this thing off with. See, now there's something about that metal impact that I felt right away. You could start that sound a little bit before this happens. You know what you could even do is you could even have this come in over here and maybe start this off with something a little bit less dramatic in the beginning, but have this come in right here. That transition on that hit, if we move it to where the hit is right on this cut, that to me that looks pretty good. It's not necessarily like sound designing exactly what's on screen. It's how you could also elevate what's on screen and add a little bit more depth and intensity to what's happening. If you look at these cuts, they're two completely different scenes, but what do we want to do? We want to give the feeling of sliding and falling into the water. And I think that if you watch this and you listen to this, that's what that kind of does. Yeah, I like that. First thing that I typically do is I'll put all my impact points of where I really want the sound design to shine, and I'll find a couple other places around here, and then I start building the environment. Here's another impact point where I think that you want to hear coming out of the water, and in my mind, I'm looking at this scene and I really want to give you the idea of there is this big, crazy storm happening. What's really awesome about Krotos is that you could just type in right here, let's just say thunder. And right away, you have something like this, wind and rain. So I'm going to click on wind and rain, and you can start playing around with these pads to get the exact sound that you want. You have something that'll make it sound closer versus like farther away. You have something like thunder. That's extremely important. That's something that I definitely want to use. So let's get a performance that I kind of like, which I think I'm going to get a baseline of the forest wind and the medium rain and just let that run for a second. And I'm just going to let Krotos do its thing. Okay, great. We got a few seconds of that. We're going to bring this in. We're going to put this here, and we're going to color code this. Now, something that's very important when you guys are sound designing is organizing your sounds by color. And we're going to kind of fade this in right around here. So we want it to kind of start fading in a little bit earlier. Now, I know that doesn't sound right now. We're going to go to a low pass filter. We're going to take this low pass filter, and we're going to start it where it sounds like you kind of still don't really hear it, because the whole idea is that like the character is under the water. We want to give it his perspective. So as he's coming up from under the water, he kind of hears the storm, but then when he pops his head out under the water, which is me, by the way, then you can start to hear the full storm. So we're going to first start off with this. Okay, and then by here, we're out of it. As soon as I go back under the water, the filter comes back on. And then at that point, we could just kill the rainwater. I think what's very important is having some thunder there to really sell the idea of a storm happening. So we're going to go back into Krotos. We're going to play a few beats of this thunder. Yeah. So if you move this in closer, you get a little bit of a closer thunder sound. This right here is our thunder sound, and our thunder should come in as soon as this whole scene is in full effect. And we are going to fade this out, fade it in a little bit. Now, what's cool about something like Windstorm, right, is that you could take this little pad and you could perform the actual sounds and how they're happening. So let's say I wanted to start this scene right here, and I'm going to record the windstorm as I'm watching it, right? You could do that, that's one of the major benefits of Krotos. So let's play this and let's start doing it. And right there, we have a sound that we could just literally drop in. Now let's take a listen. I think it could come down in volume a little bit, but I like it for the most part. Okay, so again, this is a blue sound because it is thunder, and we're going to make this one blue too because this is all the idea of thunder, right? All right, we definitely need some water sounds, but one thing that I'll say is you need a little bit of rain and stuff happening in the beginning as well. So let's copy this and paste this rain sound over here, right? So let's just bring this over here because we're out of the water at this point. So we need a little bit of rain sound. But I think right here is a hard cutoff. So we're going to fade this out right there. So we start with rain. And then we're in a hard cutoff. Now, on this scene right here, we need to make it sound like he's underwater. If we go to Krotos, let's just say underwater. And that's what I love about Krotos. You can just type it in. And look at this. You have submerged, underwater movement, splashing, water movement, bubble splash. Amazing stuff. So let's go to the first one. Let's go to submerged. Let's see what we can find here. Look at that. All I did was click on it, and automatically it sounds pretty good. Let's just see what happens. Let's just see what happens if I just drag that in. I didn't even do anything. So let's just drag that in really quick and let's see what happens. Now this is a water sound, so we're going to color code this a different color. That's not bad. What if we move the sound a little bit and we just kind of play with it? Oh, that sounds good. Look at that. We got a little bit of underwater bubble action happening. Oh yeah, look at that. That's amazing. Let's keep that going. And that works because the bubbles of my mouth sound like it's making that sound. And then we could fade out the bubble sounds right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a fade and just start really fading it out aggressively around that point. So there's going to be a natural fade. And now you're in above the water and you're in the storm. Let's see if we take it to breathing and bubbles. Let's see what that sounds like. That's really interesting. Okay, so we're gonna stop that recording. We're gonna drag it in just to have it because there's little moments in there that I think were pretty good. And let's just see what happens if we kind of add this into a point where there's a lot of bubbles happening. I think like right in the beginning is kind of... I think at that point right here though, they should stop, right? So like we'll fade it out right there. There is a bit of underwater movement right here. So like right there with my hands. So let's see if we can get a little bit of underwater movement. Let's see what that sounds like. That was really interesting. It sounds like the hands are moving and struggling to get out of the water. I think right at the end there could be a cool place to use it. Or in the beginning, let's see what feels better. Maybe around here. And then I'm gonna mess with this audio track and bring this part in a little bit, like this part right here. I'm gonna bring in a little bit sooner, and I'm gonna crossfade it so it doesn't sound like an abrupt change. But watch this. Almost. I think it should start like maybe right there instead. So let's crossfade that. Ooh, that sounds really good, man. Like, look at the motion of the hands. Like, if you just solo this right now, check this out. That feels good. That, like, almost matches up perfectly. That's crazy, and I performed that live. We're going to turn these other bubble sounds down a little bit. The only issue is that there's, like, an abrupt cutoff. And then I think that because of that, we need to fade in a little bit more of the other bubble sounds. So what I'm going to do is, this is another bubble sound right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the volume, the intensity as this one is ending. So let's bring this up a little bit. And I think we need a slow move away because my hand here, it's like, that's the thing about sound design. Like if you're going to really follow and commit to a movement, if there's another movement right after that doesn't follow that, it kind of feels inconsistent. That's what makes it not feel real. Yeah, we need a little bit of a hand movement right here. And that could just be something as simple as this. And let's fade both of them together. Oh, that felt good. See, sometimes it's really about just like moving around the sounds and fading them in and out of each other to see if you can get them to kind of merge into something that feels like it's believable. Another big thing is using the natural sound design as well. This sound right here is me recording it myself. That little gasp for air is definitely going to help bring a realism out to the scene. So check this out. Right there where my mouth is opened above the water, we're going to put this little gasp of air. And this, we're going to label a different color. Okay, so check this out. I like that a lot. Now we need another one of those when I come out of the water right here. Another gasp for air right here, I think. So let's bring that again over right there. Yep, that's it. Perfectly placed. Now we're going to start to figure out our water splashing. Again, we're going to go over to Krotos and we're going to go to water splash. We have the ability to play in this water splash. So we can mix all that together. I mean, if you just solo that together and you're listening to the splashing sounds, it sounds pretty real. The only issue to me, it sounds a little bit close. We're going to give it just a little bit of reverb, both of the channels. It just sounds natural. That's what I love about Krotos, man. It's like, it sounds natural. If you just listen to this water sound right here and just add like little layers, you know, and that's what makes it kind of sound real. Not just having one sound, but several sounds stacked together as well. I think here in this moment, you need to definitely hear some aggressive splashing, but I think that you also need to hear the rain and the storm and things being extremely aggressive with the thunder. So I believe this is thunder. So we're going to make this thunder come in. And we're going to bring this thunder all the way up. So let's see if we can really get some nice splashes going. If you watch this scene though, the splashes are heavy and short. So I think that if we take this and we slow it down, maybe 30%. Let's go to 70% speed. Let's turn up the volume a little bit, go like +3. I like that little sound right there. So we're going to layer it again. And what I'm looking for is to fill in some of these gaps, because if you have too much of a gap, it doesn't make any sense. The only issue that I have right now is that it feels like the water's a little too close to the camera. That's one thing about sound design that you got to keep in mind, is like measuring it. Like, it's almost like the sound will measure the distance between you and the camera. And one thing that I feel like really helps give you the feeling for sound design is understanding the measurement of sound and how the sound would interact with the scene given how close or how far away it is. Now that is some good splashing. And we could take some of those splashes and work them into this edit here. And you might have to play around with it a little bit, but ultimately you just have to find the right sound at the right time. So basically what I've done is gathered up a bunch of different performances of splashing and water and all of this stuff. And then what I've done here is I was able to kind of mix them all together to create this scene of the splashes. At this last part, we're going to go to our underwater sounds and our bubbles and stuff. We're going to copy and paste some of this stuff over here because we already know what that underwater sound sounds like. That to me is already sounding pretty good. And then I also think having some of this thrashing around could be good too. So we're going to take this and copy this, but at the right place. I think that sounds pretty cool right there. If we take this and move it, take this part of the sound and move it and drag this out and just kind of fade it out. Now, what we need is, we need to mimic those hand movements right there. Those hand movements right there need a sound. It's got to be a slow movement. So what we could do is we go back into Krotos. So this is pretty deep, right? Like the sound looks deep. That last sound I felt like was a pretty good performance. So let's see what that feels like. Place that right there. Now we're going to take a yell that I created and we are going to place this at the right point, but we also are going to take the speed and we're going to reduce it from 100% down to 50%. Now, what this is going to do is two things. Number one, the clip that you're seeing is slowed down about 40%. The yell in the clip is supposed to be super long. Now, there's no way my lungs could handle that, but also it's going to give a cool effect by lowering the speed of the yell 50%. It's not only going to drag out the length of the yell, but it's also going to lower the pitch. Let's just see how this feels right now. So we're getting close. I think this needs to move over a little bit. There you go. Okay, now let's drag it out. The yell ends here. We need the yell to last a little bit longer than that. So we're going to drag this out. We're going to go to the middle of this yell so it sounds like it can kind of connect. And we're going to fade them in together, and then we're going to have this come out. You got the little hand movements from the underwater. You have the bubbles coming out. Yeah, that feels real. The real big thing is the atmosphere of the ocean. We have yet to create that, which is probably one of the most important things. So let's do this. Let's go to Krotos, and just for the hell of it, let's go to AI ambience generator from Krotos, and we're going to type in ocean storm. Let's see what Krotos generates for us. This is kind of fun. Really cool. Let's play with the waves. Let's see what that feels like. That feels good. Okay, now we need the wind and the storm. I like that moment right there. That sounds intense. Let's put that in there. Okay, we're going to fade this in right before we come into this scene because you don't want it to just start right here. You want it to kind of start fading in here. And, you know, I would even say before there, I would say right when we're coming up, we want to fade it in like right there. That sounds intense. So here is where I think another hit or another dramatic change, something creative needs to happen with the sound design in this moment. When I have my head out of the water and we come back into the water. Let's go to cinematic and let's play with a few things. Wow, that subtle flow filtered hit really did something cool. So let's see what that looks like. Love that. It's almost perfect, I would say. Yeah, to me, that feels right. It's subtle. It's subtle enough to where it's not like overbearing, but you still feel the impact of it. The other thing that you have to consider is that, like, while you're sound designing this, what's your music? Because you also need a moment for the sound design to have impact, but also the music will have a ton of impact on what your sound design should be. Now it's time to bring in the music, and let's just hear how the whole scene plays out with the music. Now, this was just a quick little scene that we sound designed, and I was able to do this in about an hour and a half. And I think what's amazing about Krotos is not only does it cut the process of looking for sounds in half, but it also keeps you more in the creative workflow and more creative state of mind. So if you guys are interested in using Krotos Studios, I'll leave a link down below so you guys can check that out. And if you guys are interested in learning more about sound design and the editing process, my team and I are putting together a course that breaks down every single aspect of filmmaking, from concept creation to cinematography to everything that is post-production in filmmaking. So if you guys are interested in that, I'll leave a link down below so you guys can check out the course, sign up for the email list, and be first to be notified as soon as that course drops. My name is Zarfati, and I want to thank you guys so much for stopping in and hanging out. I'll see you guys next week.